All right, so welcome everybody again. We had already a good 3 hours of movement, reading, and meditation in the morning, in the afternoon, sorry. Now it's time for an interview. We're gonna have an interview with Karima Jam, a biohacker and certified specialist in health and self-development methods and practices. Bam! I met Karima when I was doing my Wim Hof instructors at the course. We're both graduates from the same from the same community or class, whatever you want to call it. And we're gonna have this 1 hour interview with Karima, and afterwards we're gonna do the new moon ceremony. Well, Felipe is going to lead us in a very nice new moon ceremony. So I'll just get right into it, right? So we met, we did the Wim Hof instructor, but you're also a human potential coach, the program from Dave Asprey, right? And you're also certified hypnotherapist, which is also a very cool topic because I think Margot, you need to have a conversation with him. I mean, we do this meditation topic, right? And hypnosis and all these frequencies and all these aspects of that they're so interesting, right? And you also work actually in human rights and international development, right? So why tell us a bit of this diverse background?
Well, everything that you listed, the coaching, the hypnosis, Wim Hof, that's all kind of a side hustle. It's my hobby, which I hope one day will turn into just, my work. Well, as they say, do what you love and you'll never work a day. So that's where I'm striving to. But yes, my day job, what pays me all of these trainings and what pays the bills for now is what I've been basically working in since the age of 21. And I've been in this for the last almost 20 years. I did a master's in gender studies. Then I also did a postgraduate in the University of Geneva on the corporate social responsibility. So right now I'm heading a small foundation that works against child labor in agriculture and in tobacco growing. So we're kind of very much on the ground, but the pandemic wasn't very well, was an obstacle for us to travel on the ground because we support projects on the ground. There's no child labor in Geneva, I mean in Switzerland, but it's all mostly in the African countries and the Asian continent and Latin America, of course. So that's where we are usually we're very much on the ground. But since the pandemic has hit us, we were pretty much paralyzed and had to kind of readjust how working remotely. So which also affected everything that you guys do as well, and the same for me. And I just came back from Kazakhstan as my home country. I was there for nearly a month. And for some interesting reason, the pandemic isn't really going that bad there as it is in Europe. So I was able to do a Wim Hof workshop. I was able to do a kind of a hypnosis / yoga nidra session at a yoga studio of my friend. So I felt like, oh, this is real life again. And now I'm back here in Geneva and we're going into a lockdown again until March for starting Monday. So yeah, you're going to have to show and you have to have a lot of resilience. And I think, there's all things biohacking and all things that you guys are teaching in this retreat and the biohacking and the Wim Hof method. Of course, they teaches you a lot of resilience and flexibility and kind of training your brain, creating all those neural connections. I said that the whole thing, the reason why the lockdown was so difficult on us, because we didn't have yet the neural connections, the neural pathways, we don't have the experience. It's like if you never ride a bike, you don't have that neural connections in your brain to know how to ride a bike. So we didn't know how to live in a lockdown. We didn't know how to survive in the global pandemic. But now I think, even though it's kind of lockdown, you're like, well, we've been there. We know what it's like. We can deal with that. We've learned to wear masks, and we've already trained our brain to keep the distance, to be a lot more aware of the germs. So that's all part of kind of adjusting and being on top of things rather than letting things rule you.
Yeah, that is exactly the question. Yeah, it's been challenging. I mean, we definitely see that as well. The 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 different aspects of it. But yeah, the second one feels a lot different. That's very true. And one question. So you've been working with them with your foundation, and but on the side you were developing all this. What started that journey for you?
Well, that was about 10 years ago, and it was a very, I would say, kind of nothing really super exciting. I can't find the adjective now for it, but a very uncool reason for starting that journey was that I hit 30s. I hit my 30s, and I was actually in Colombia at that time, and I realized like, well, I can't eat just anything, because before I could just eat anything and I never gained weight. So just like any woman, well, not any, many women, I was just driven by the fact that, okay, I gotta start watching what I'm eating. So that kind of led me into finally understanding all of these, you know, the proteins, the carbs, and the fats, and trying to understand what you put in your mouth and how it affects you. Then I realized like, okay, eating is not enough. You have to look into fitness. I tried everything and never really kind of tried running, tried swimming, dancing. That didn't kind of hook me. And then I discovered HIIT, the high intensity interval training. And that really hooked me. And I started with just 4 minutes, just doing, okay, 50 seconds work, 10 seconds rest. And that amazingly really, really hooked me. So yeah, now since 10 years on, I'm still training. Lately, probably is not as regularly because I've been having a little bit of a hormonal imbalance and then kind of had to go easy on the type of training I do. And then like one thing led to another, but I've always been interested in, I guess, in kind of more energy stuff. I come from a family that is open to these things. My mom always kind of felt like she had some kind of healing hands. And before all of these things, I was really kind of attuned to energy stuff. Then after the training and then the diet, I thought, okay, let me go and train myself as a Reiki master. I did that too. And then it's just kind of like when you open it, it's just, you start pulling out all of these fun things. It's never ending, right?
Yeah, there's always the next thing, like, oh, look at that.
Exactly. Like, oh, there's another thing. So that's where I got into. And
when did the human potential coach part came in with
so
Dave Asprey?
that's a good question, because that came, so basically, so 10 years back, then I started digging. And then about 5 years in, I realized like, I just don't want to be working in employment until, you know, the rest of my life. I just want to be independent, and I want to also share what I do. And somebody said like, oh my God, you're so passionate talking about all this health stuff. Why don't you do it for life, like as a main job? I said, well, not a bad idea. So I started looking into different things of how I can make it like a living out of it. So more or less at the same time, I discovered the Wim Hof method. Was also the coaching, the human potential. At that time,
so
they
Wim
used
Hof
to
came before Dave Asprey.
No, they was more or less at the same time. So that was
right.
Finally, like all of these searches, and it was in 2016, 17 when I realized that I got to do something, and I was really actively searching for what drove me to the human potential. I mean, now they've renamed into human potential. They used to be bulletproof coaches. Was precisely the biohacking part of it, because I realized that it's just like everything is so interconnected, and we just, you know, you can't only look at it and nutrition. You can't only look at fitness. It has to be all connected.
Yeah,
and exactly. And then when I saw that I could train as a Wim Hof instructor, and then the bulletproof coaching, I literally studied both in parallel. I was very much at the same time when I enrolled in both trainings. And the bulletproof coaching was really, of course, it's a coaching program. It teaches you how to coach, but it has that biohacking side kind of bonus to it, which is exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah,
And
so was it more like all nutrition and maybe for those who don't know Dave Asprey, I mean the first time I read about it, I was he talks about he was the inventor of the bulletproof coffee, which is some like a way, it's an intermittent fasting regime. And he was really one of the first ones that came out with this idea, or at least put
well,
it
he
out like that.
popularized it because he
Yeah,
basically he
for
took it from
exactly.
the
Oh,
from
yeah.
the Tibetans. Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell us a bit about it, maybe, that so that the people that don't know Dave Asprey. I
So Dave
changed my
Asprey,
diet after I read his book.
yeah, well, he's an entrepreneur, basically. He used to work, I think, in IT. I'm not sure if I don't want to say in
Yeah, it was
Silicon
IT.
Valley.
It was IT. No, in
Maybe he
Silicon
was in
Valley,
the
IT.
Silicon Valley. Yeah, so he was in IT. And basically, he was living in a basement of his dad. And he was like really very much overweight or maybe even obese and sick all the time, low in energy. And he was a vegan and he was training. And he was like, well, I just don't see any difference. I'm training hard, eating little, eating healthy, and nothing's changing. And then also at the same time, he was also having some mood swings. He said he used to be a jerk, complete jerk, and not a nice person to be around. And then he started digging. No, like traditional medicine doctors couldn't quite find out what was wrong with him. And he started his own quest, and he realized soon or later that he was living in a molded basement, and the mold, the black mold that was in that area and that basement was making him sick. And mold is really not that innocent, especially black mold. And the spores that it as it reproduces, you're basically inhaling that, and it could be extremely toxic. So mycotoxins is a real thing. And when he found out about it, then he was able, of course, he left and he changed. Also, he looked into the ketogenic and low carb diet. He also changed. He stopped being a vegan. He started eating more fats. And basically he realized that, okay, that's his thing. He called it biohacking. He calls himself the father of biohacking, and the word hacking there obviously comes from his IT background. And he literally hacked his own biology, his own physiology, psychology, and the environment, so that he could become healthier. And then he made a movie about it. By the way, you can Google the movie Mold, and I think it's available on the internet for free. And that's a big thing apparently in the US. A lot of the buildings are infected by mold. I myself also, I remember growing up in the post-Soviet Kazakhstan. We were living in the ground floor apartment, and I remember seeing black mold in our bathroom. We weren't sick, I guess. I mean, not everybody gets sick by black mold, so you have to have specific sensitivity to it. And then he traveled to Himalayas. He saw that these Sherpas were drinking this tea with the fat in it, and then they like had all this energy all the time. And he's like, what the hell? So he brought it back, he adapted it, and then he popularized it, and that's why it's called bulletproof coffee, because his company is called Bulletproof, and he's got a lot of different products that are keto friendly, that are biohacker friendly, and I must say it's quite unique what he does. And then of course he realized that it's not just about biology, it's also the psychology, it's also the kind of the mindset thing. So he opened this coaching institute, and then he has this program, 40 Years of Zen, where they use precisely exactly the neurofeedback equipment to train executives or whoever can afford going through that program. I think
it's pretty expensive, right?
It's like 15K for 2 or 3 days or 5 days. And
that's a program that apparently after you do it, you achieve like the meditation level of people that have been meditating for I don't know
40
how many years.
Exactly. So this is the reason it's called 40 Years of Zen. So you do what they would normally do in 40 years, but because you use the neurofeedback, you can train your brain much faster. And by the way, I absolutely know what it means, because I've been using these inner balance meditation device from the Heart Math Institute. And it's not actually reading your neural, well, in a way, what it does is it reads your heart rate variability, and it measures your coherence between the brain waves and the heart, the HRV, the heart rhythms. So you have like a device that is attached to your ear and somewhere here near the heart. I actually have it here. I can show it now. It's just a meter away from me, and then I realized that for me, meditating that way was like a shortcut, and that was the only thing that helped me integrate meditation into a daily practice. Because before I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll meditate. Maybe I won't meditate. But this thing, you have an app that comes with it. You see your own progress. There are levels. I'm now on level 3 out of 4, and I absolutely love hearing that little sound where it tells you that you are in high coherence, or when you're suddenly kind of getting a little distracted, then you hear the nasty sound that tells you you're out of high coherence. And because you then learn that state, you feel that you basically, by hearing that feedback, biofeedback, the sound that tells you, yes, you are in high coherence, and it kind of repeats every so seconds, then you understand what it really means. Like, oh, okay, that's how it feels. Okay. And that's how you train your brain. And I find
so
that amazing. So I would say that, I'm also kind of hacking what the monks would be probably spending 10 years on. I'm doing that with a little device. So
no, I mean, we that's one of the topics as well. Meditation, a big part of our work and what we've been presenting in this retreat. And the meditation part, the fact that you can have a feedback, that you can have the certainty if you are or if you are not, that makes a huge difference. That's Margot also works with an EEG where he hooks you up to the machine. And in our natural movement sort of context, we think about it like, I mean, it's hard for us to come into these habits like naturally, right? And having this feedback is something that sort of opens the door for you and invites you to go into these more natural sort of practices. And we need this type of push. We need this type of help to come into. I guess there's like a spectrum, right? So you could have Dave Asprey on the side being a very avid biohacker, right? And you see him with the diabetes plaques.
I have it too, by the way.
Exactly, there you go. And then you have the other side, like I don't know, like caveman style type of health, which is also going to be a very robust and very strong health. And then how can you, where do you put yourself, right?
Yeah, I use exactly the same analogy. I say the biohacker is a very wide spectrum of definition. On one side, you have like really the cyborg type of people who like to use all these gadgets and then implant stuff and then like really go crazy on supplements. And then the other side is kind of the caveman living in the forest, foraging and hunting his or her own food. I guess I'm somewhere in the middle. I love gadgets. I love gadgets to the point where I can still distance myself from them, and I can say, okay, yeah, I don't have a gadget, I can still live. It's not like I'm so totally dependent on them. I use them to measure my progress, to kind of help me be on track. And then at the same time, also always strive to more primitive and kind of very basic things like breathing, like cold exposure.
The Wim Hof side of you.
Exactly, the Wim Hof side of me, and also eating like very simple foods and processing the minimum processing and just sometimes like people say, oh yeah, but I have this and that, and what kind of supplement? And sometimes I just say, just go to sleep, just sleep and rest.
So important.
Exactly. And that's like, you don't need supplements. Your body has innate ability to heal itself, to restore the balance. You just need to allow it and not stand in its way with like long hours of working and stress. And I know that no amount of cold exposure and Wim Hof will save me from lack of sleep. I'll get sick, and that's actually what happened. I think the last time I was sick, which I don't remember when, but I know it's exactly why it happened. Not because I wasn't doing cold exposure correctly or enough. It's simply because I was just so stressed and I didn't sleep enough. And then my immune system, my defense went down, and then all these viruses and bacteria were able to attack.
Yeah, that's definitely a very important aspect. Stress, the lifestyle, everything. But what other gadgets do you have? So you have the heart coherence part for a feedback for the meditation.
Yeah, then I have the Oura Ring.
Yeah,
that's the sleep tracker.
Yeah.
It used to be a lot bigger before. This is the second generation. It's much nicer. It basically looks like my wedding ring. Yeah, it's nice to have kind of this feedback on your sleep, to have the data and to understand what affects your sleep. There are people who say that there's still a bit of margin of error on kind of on measuring the deep sleep and the REM sleep, which are the two important phases that you really want to get into. Like, there are basically 4 different phases of sleep, but the light sleep, everybody gets light sleep, but the REM, where you have the rapid eye movement, it's the phase where you see dreams, and the deep sleep. These are the key phases that you want to make sure that you have at least 20% of that in every night. So it really helped me to understand what affects the quality of my sleep, because some people say, well, why do you need it? I know when I wake up, I feel fine, or I feel tired. Like, yeah, it's good enough, but you want to still be able to see that, for example, you spent like a lot of time, maybe in a particular, maybe if you know that this temperature was way too high for you, and that's why you didn't sleep well. And then you can measure that on how it affects you. For me, it was very clear early on that late dinner and alcohol affects my sleep. It's not the case for my husband, for example. He also uses the Oura ring. But so that's why it's very individual. I mean, of course, everybody says, well, late dinners and alcohol affects you. Yes, it does affect everybody, but somehow to a greater extent or to a lesser extent. So Oura ring is also very nice in kind of recommending you when it looks at your heart rate variability as well. And even if you feel that you've slept well, and then you look at your heart rate variability, and then the Oura ring tells you, oh, it's really low, and your heart rate was really high. That's what it measures. It's like there are little arteria here that it measures. And then basically I've had days where I feel rested, I feel fine, and then you see, oh my God, what happened? My heart rate variability was super low. And then usually they are what's the word? They are completely opposite. If your heart rate is high, your heart rate variability is low, and the other way around. And then it kind of makes you also think that it's not just about knowing how you feel, but also understanding what's going on with your body. And for example, also for women, it doesn't. I mean, it shows you also the variation of your body temperature. And then, like for women's cycle, then you can also see, okay, then your body temperature is going up, and it can also be like there's a particular time in your cycle. So it's there are obviously.
That's interesting, you know. Well, like, but one of the things that we like about the new moon ceremony is that it provides this framework, this cycle of 28 days, where you have the first part of the cycle going up all the way until full moon, and then from full moon going then all the way down to new moon again. And this cycle is, of course, we see it as well in the female cycle. And so you're talking about, I really like this idea of bringing the two worlds together. I mean, there's still something else, right? For example, when we do Wim Hof, the Wim Hof part, you can't really measure that much, right? When you're in the ice, when you're outside and you're in the cold, you have to go a bit more deep and really just be away from all this information and like sort of left brain type of activity, right? But then on the other side, you have all these tools like I mean, even just measuring your weight, the temperature that you have, that you can integrate these inputs into your life. That also has a value, right? So that's pretty much one of the points.
And exactly, it also tells you if you're because it doesn't actually measure your temperature per se. It just tells you the deviation from the sort of the optimal body temperature, and it also learns from you. It doesn't say, oh, okay, that's everybody, but it really like will take maybe a couple of weeks to learn from you, your own biodata. And then you will also note that if your body temperature is going slightly up, then maybe you're coming down with something. That's also like interesting to see the early signs where you need to take preventive measures. And then, but of course, I know this is a community of people who are very much in tune with their bodies. I know you don't need an Oura ring for you to know that something is off with you. But obviously, there are people who are sometimes so caught up in their heads that they need some external input to be able to say, to have like a wake up call.
Yeah, no, I think it's very useful. I mean, for example, one of the things, oxygen advantage, and when you increase the CO2 and you start using the nose for breathing, how it also affects your snoring, right? So I've been sleeping for, I think, about 4 months now, and I tape my mouth, and I've stopped snoring, and that's really significant for me. And I was thinking, like, if I had an Aura ring, if I could have seen this process, right, and I would have had more, because right now it's like my wife tells me that I don't snore anymore, but I don't. I mean, it's not, that is not exactly the case. Like with the Aura ring, I really had like a graph where I would see it, kind of thing.
But your wife is the best measurement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end we come to the same conclusion.
Yeah. I used to tape my mouth as well, because I don't snore, but I tend to sleep with an open mouth, and then my mouth is dry. So I wake up with a dry mouth. The problem is I'm allergic to, like, I've tried already 2 different tapes, and I end up having like little allergies. So even if they say that's hypoallergenic, it still gives me a bit of a reaction. So I'm yet to find a tape that doesn't cause any reaction on my skin.
Yeah, that's a difficult price to pay. I mean, I'm very happy. I think it has done. Another thing I remember, like when the cycle is working correctly, and you're breathing through your nose, you don't have to go to the toilet. It gets inhibited, kind of thing. You can sleep longer. Exactly. Yeah, but if you don't, then you have to wake up, and that was one thing that also changed in my life. For example, I mean, in terms of sleep quality, it's a huge thing, right?
But the thing is, it's not just about sleeping with the mouth closed and learning to breathe in through your nose. I imagine you've already spoken about it before. It's training your brain, training your body to always go for the nasal breathing. So when people tell me, oh, so should I tape my husband's mouth? And like, wait, don't do that. Just try to learn during the day, tape it when you are still awake, because if you are not doing that when you are awake, and then when you sleep, chances are you'll just remove it unconsciously, which also happened to me.
Yeah, it also happened to me. At the beginning, I had a very small tape because it made me feel better. Right now, I just don't want anything in there, so I just put a big one there. But but you're right, and that was one of the techniques that we were using today in the unfold, pinching your nose and walking around, which is also a very nice technique that you can just apply very easily. You don't even have to pinch your nose if you get socially conscious about it, but it's a good way of starting that cycle.
Yeah.
And tell me more about your Wim Hof side. So this more intuitive part, the challenges, right? We went up to Mount Snieska together. That was a bit of a story.
Yeah, we made history with that climb.
So how that, because it seems to be like the two polarities, right? So you have the data-driven part, and then the more intuition part.
Yeah. Oh, for me, I think the Wim Hof method was like the cherry on the top when I finally made that connection between. So before it was like the biohacking side. If you only look into just what's in you and you're measuring, it's really just very material, and it's basically just about brain and body. With the Wim Hof, it kind of connected with the spirit and the nature. And the meditation, of course, that all of that. And for me, when I also found out about the Joe Dispenza work, then it's like, okay, now like my life can never be different, the same anymore. Like you cannot unlearn that.
Yeah, it was the same with us. Joe Dispenza entered the game. He was like, all right.
It's like you understand the life now, right?
Yeah. It's a huge thing when you understand how much responsibility you have over your own actions, over your own words, and how that feedbacks into your reality, right? So it's an amazing topic.
Yeah. So no, the Wim Hof, I guess I used to be also like, I always tell people that I did not love cold. I did not come to the Wim Hof method because I was like, oh, great, I love cold. No, it was a complete transformation for me. I used to be such a, what's the English word? In French, we say frileuse. In English is, someone who just,
who has it's cold all the time.
Yes, and you in Spanish is frigolera or something like that, right?
Yeah, sí, sí.
So then you have like you hate cold to the core. You just literally hate it. So I used to be like that. I
Yeah.
had my feet and hands always freezing, and like every time winter comes, and like I'd say, it just would be paralyzing. You think about cold all the time, and it's literally paralyzing. So for me, it was definitely not something that came naturally. But you know, coming from the former Soviet Union, we had this guy who was kind of a Russian Wim Hof. His name was Porfiry Ivanov, and he lived like in the beginning of the 20th century, and then during Soviet times they kind of discovered his teachings, and they were kind of like 10 different commandments, pretty much the same what Wim does, you know, nature. And you like, I'd say, go out in the winter and then throw a bucket of water on yourself and then eat healthy, blah, blah. It's nothing really new. And so that I found out about him when I was about 7 or 8, still in the Soviet Union. But of course, my parents were not of the opinion of like, all right, let's go and try it. So, but it sat somewhere deep in my memory. So when I heard about Wim Hof, by the way, from the Tim Ferriss podcast, the very first time, and it really like, oh, okay, light bulb went up. And but I didn't try immediately. I kind of tried some cold showers, and it was always like, like let it finish soon, quickly. So it was not fun. And then, of course, when I integrated the breathing part, then it was like it flipped the coin completely.
Yeah.
And then I said, aha, that's what it is. So as a woman, I also always tell my students, everybody who comes and asks for about the Wim Hof, I said, especially women should practice it. And it's like really the cold and the breathing, they are the tools, obviously. It's not like the main pillar is the mindset in the Wim Hof method. So that's kind of the foundation but you can't get to practicing training with cold or with breathing before you can have that foundational mindset where you say, I want to be in charge of my own well-being. I want to be in charge of my head. I want to be in charge of my health. And then so once you get it sorted, then you kind of start playing with the breathing and the cold. And why I recommend it to women so strongly is precisely because for me, it kind of gave me that confidence. And usually women, we tend to have less confidence than men. I mean, again, I'm not talking for all women, but depending on your upbringing. And that feeling of knowing that, well, if I did that, I went up the Mount Snezhka in shorts, I sat in an ice bath. If I can do that, I can do anything. And that's a huge confidence boost.
Yeah, I've seen it too in my group, for example. I always say the same thing. Women, they usually are more scared about the ice at the beginning, but they usually handle the ice a lot better than men. You see the guys always keeping the face, right? And they jump into the water and then bim. And the women, they go like, they're like all the time and they're nervous, but then they go into the water and they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's true.
That's
and then it kind of, like you said, is this intuitive. It really brings you so close to your body. It kind of opens up so many doors, and you're just. I mean, I remember the very first time I started going to the lake. It's just like this nirvana. You go and you sit in the lake, and you just feel this unity with everything that is. And then, of course, the breath work. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've covered that too. So it's just like, for me, that was really a big life changer and an eye opener. And I always say, to become a biohacker, you don't need gadgets, you don't need supplements, you don't need all of these super new things, studies or nothing. You just need to breathe and to master the elements.
and sleep well.
And sleep well, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, remember Miguel. Miguel was saying like you just have to follow up the baby's process, right? So they are born, and the first thing they do is they breathe. So pay attention to your breathing. Then they eat. So pay attention to your nutrition. Then they sleep. and they shit sometimes.
Exactly. And make sure
Or,
you poop well too.
so that's the same thing. You guys, you sleep and you poop. Bam! If you have those four things going on for you, then you have no problem.
Yeah, exactly. And babies, they also have a lot of brown fat. And then
Yeah.
the babies are also not afraid of cold. We teach them to become afraid of cold. So I also have a lot of friends and followers who are mothers, and they say, but how do you train babies to cold? I said, you don't train them. You don't put ideas into their heads. Don't scare them. Just
Yeah.
let them be. And like one of my friends was saying, her 1-month-old son, she stopped covering him with a blanket. The room temperature is like 18, 19 degrees. She stopped putting socks on him, and now he sleeps deeper and longer and through the night. So he doesn't wake up as often anymore. And then other friends with more grown up babies, they tell me, oh no, we never put socks on them. Then they're just running around. And guys, who remembers? Please tell me. When your mom, when you were a kid, you would tell you, oh, you have to wear this, you have to wear that. What was your reaction? I mean, everybody
I don't
hated,
want to.
right?
Yeah.
I hated wearing stockings. I hated wearing hats. My mom would always like put things on me. I was never cold. Who remembers being cold as a kid?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think this is a nice cue. If you have any questions, we can open up a bit the round and ask around to the audience. If you have any question, any particular topic that has interested you?
Could you perhaps outline your daily routine that you have for your health practices?
They're not that as exciting. So I wake up, sit up in a meditation. Usually during the work day, it's about 15 minutes. On the weekend, I allow a little bit longer. Then the shower, I usually shower with immediately cold shower. I allow myself hot showers on days when I'm tired, it's like, again, you just need to feel the body. Like I had a long haul flight on Thursday, and then today and yesterday I took warm showers and I loved them. Also for women during the cycle, when the first day of a cycle, I also love me some hot shower. But all the other days, cold showers. I usually I do intermittent fasting, but it's nothing that is like, oh, I have to do it. It's just, again, intuitive. I never feel hungry when I wake up. And it usually would be like 2-3 hours in after waking up when I would start feeling hungry. And then what my breakfast is the bulletproof coffee that we talked about. I do allow myself some supplements. And especially like during the week when I'm an executive and you need to have a lot of clarity and fast decision making. So I take some mushrooms like the lion's mane, chaga, sometimes cordyceps. These are really good. So the lion's mane is a good it supports the neural growth, neurogenesis. So basically, I think for the nervous system, it supports the kind of the clarity of the thinking, memory. Chaga is a very good antioxidant, and it supports immune health. And cordyceps
The chaga, you have to do it in the water, right? You put it in the water and then like a tea, right?
Well, yes, exactly. There's this form. I wasn't able to find that form. I bought something that is just like a tincture. But to make a tea is the best. Then you have the Four Sigmatic, the guys, the Finns who are selling it. Then there's also this very important cordyceps, which is basically like a parasite mushroom. It apparently enters the body of an insect or something and then grows out of it. It's a really weird mushroom, but it's very good for all kind of the muscle support and physical recovery. I now at this given time, I only have the lion's mane and chaga. Then I also use ashwagandha. It's an Indian plant that is a good adaptogen. And for me, especially like in the winter times or when I change time zones or there's a change from one season to another, it's also good to support. Apart from ashwagandha, there's also rhodiola, which is another adaptogen, but it has a little bit of a different effect. Then I always make sure that I have of course, all of these supplements, you have to know the baseline. So I, for example, know that my vitamin D levels, especially now there's not enough sun, they kind of tend to be lower than the vitamin B group. vitamin B group, different like B1, B12, 6, and 5, whatnot, and all these numbers. So I don't usually take vitamins just out of the blue, and I don't take multivitamins, because in terms of multivitamins, you're taking a lot of the things that you don't really need, and then the things that you need are in very low dosage. So I'm taking now vitamin D3, and you also need to know what dosage is appropriate, because like the thing that I bought only has 600 international units, but then technically to maintain your vitamin D levels, if you're not in deficiency, if you're not deficient, you need at least 1,500 to 2,000. So I'm taking not one pill, although the thing says take one pill daily. I mean, and that one pill will not do anything at all. But I also try not to go really crazy about supplements. I know it's a very slippery slope. And I don't take them on a constant basis. For me, supplements are just like, okay, I'll finish the bottle and that'll probably be a month before I take it again. Yeah. Then throughout the day, I try to just kind of keep myself active. I go for a walk in the morning. Then at midday, if I have time, I'll do either like a quick workout or yoga. Lately, I have been so busy, not counting obviously the vacation I was in Kazakhstan, that I barely managed to get any kind of movement. But I always try to, as soon as I can, I always move as much as possible. And then, of course, in the evening, there's a bit of trying not to eat too late, not too much. And like when I eat my lunch, it's always healthy proteins and fats and lots of plant food. The Wim Hof method breathing, I only do on weekends, because during the week for me, it could be a little bit too violent. I've been in a place where I've overdone Wim Hof breathing, because it can be actually quite powerful in terms of the adrenaline and cortisol. And at some point I was like, okay, we got to slow down. I ended up having tachycardia, like arrhythmia, like out of the blue. I'll be sitting and then boom, my heart starts racing. And for a long time I couldn't quite find out what it was. And then I connected it to this, and when I stopped doing that kind of breathing every day, it definitely became a lot better. But again, with the Wim Hof breathing, I think it just depends on your needs. There's people who benefit immensely from doing it daily, and others don't need so much of kind of this very active breathing. And then in the evening, I always try to have something calming. I wear my blue blocker glasses. Again, I have something, but like these weird red glasses that is something like that. Or if I'm not at home, I try to always dim the light. So sometimes you can't just have those glasses with you, and you just make sure that you don't have the bright light right into your face or your eyes for at least an hour or two before going to bed. And yeah, I think that's just very simple. Well, and then of course the weekend is a bit different. The weekend is always like the lake. There's eating a little bit more nice little things that you would normally not allow yourself. So I also not too hard on nutrition. I used to do a ketogenic low carb diet for a couple of years, and then I kind of trained my body into this flexibility, metabolic flexibility, where I think I can use both the fat for energy and glucose. And now I don't follow any particular diet. I eat pretty much anything. I feel like, it's part of the mental health as well. I don't want to be always running around with a scale and say, oh, how many grams of fat is that? No, done. Been there, done that.
You got to do it at the beginning to understand, but then you have to let go.
Exactly. You just like let go and enjoy.
Yeah. Okay, I think Chisco had a question, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, hi. I have a little question, because you mentioned, if I understood correctly, that your mother also had like this kind of healing hands you mentioned, and you also yourself did some Reiki. Is that like a path you at some point just stopped, or do you still do something in that direction?
I still use Reiki. Hi, Francisco. I still use Reiki, but more for family. Sometimes my mom would not feel well and she would call me and say, look, I'm not feeling well. Could you also do some Reiki for me? For me, energy is actually very much present in my life right now. So when I meditate in kind of Joe Dispenza style on heart coherence, where I consciously elevate my own energy. So we'll go in kind of through the chakras. And then it's like you're plugging your two fingers in a socket. It's amazing. You know, sometimes I can just sleep maybe 5 hours, not having enough sleep. And then I do this meditation where you also actively engage your heart chakra. So you go through your own chakras, like through the different chakras, or sometimes I don't have time even for that. I just go straight in activating the heart chakra, which by the way is a great immune booster because you have the thymus gland here. Exactly. And then when you consciously kind of draw your attention to it and you activate the heart chakra, and then I always kind of turn on this Wi-Fi style where it's not just here. I always try to kind of create that field around me that that is also this positive energy and high elevated emotions. And I think this is, I mean, I guess I'm yet to measure that. I don't have the way to measure that, but I think that's what has kept me quite healthy for the, you know, even healthier, even more healthier with the Wim Hof method. Of course, you have the Wim Hof method that trains your cardiovascular system and boosts your immune system, but specifically kind of elevating your energy and resting, staying in that high vibration of love and gratitude and really not just keeping it to yourself, but kind of doing that Wi-Fi signal. I think that has really contributed to me keeping up my health and also influencing the people around you, because that's also another reason why I do it. For me, it's not just about me; it's about what kind of energy that I'm creating and sending it out there. But in terms of laying really specifically hands, like doing Reiki, I really keep it just for my mom and on my close ones. And my mom doesn't have that like training, but I know when she used to take care of her, you know, sick relatives, they always say like, "Oh, your hands are so." Not just warm, but like she wouldn't really have that. So she unfortunately didn't develop that into something bigger, but I think technically we all have that. Just need to develop it. I don't think it's a gift that is given to anyone. Some people are a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more empathetic, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, you can develop, anybody can develop that.
I would like to add something. I was actually a little bit of was not sure what is expecting me if my two friends here, my colleagues asked me there is a biohacker expert, because biohacking, Marbot and me were discussing once that biohacking had a feeling, or what we encountered or got informations of cheaters, actually. Cheaters who don't want to take the extra mile to getting back to something healthy. They want a shortcut to improvement of health or something. And I'm really relieved to say this is that big range. This is so big definition. And I think this is very important to find a biohacking site where things are reasonable and things getting a little bit of more beat. Let's say if someone who is so into his job and so busy and is expecting that you take this pill and everything will be fine again, I think this is the complete wrong way. This should also be biohacking. Taking any supplements, whatever, making surgery because you have no time to build something up honestly. And I think what these people are actually lacking is getting back to the connection to our evolution. There is something we can't hack, and there is something we can't shortcut. And this is what you say. Okay, Wim Hof is a biohacking actually, but could there be a possibility to even make this Wim Hof method shorter, hack it again? I think there's a deadline. on this. You can't do this. You have to go into the ice. You have to do the breathing. You can't check breathing with a whatever. You can't freeze in 2 seconds because you have no time for more. So I think that everybody needs to decide how much can you do without losing something. And I think the most important thing we should never lose is the feeling. Yeah, because we have all these devices, the Aura Ring and heart rate variability. This is because we lost actually feeling for it. We don't have time for feeling, or we don't want to feel. We've got a trauma and we cannot feel or whatever. But I think the most important thing is getting back to feeling and tracking your improvement by feeling and not by a technical device. If it's getting too complex or too difficult, or there's an illness or whatever, then take this one, but don't rely on it too much, I think. So just reasonable biohacking and not too much. Don't be slaved by biohacking, slave biohacking.
Very well, to the point, spot on. Yes, thank you. I fully agree. For me, again, you want to use these tools and not let these tools use you. And I think in terms of just cheating, also, yes, I would say as a modern person, I like to be able to have these little shortcuts here and there. But again, for me, ultimately, what is more important is this. It's here.
Yeah.
And like connecting the body, mind, the spirit, and the nature, and that's what the Wim Hof method does. I think, unfortunately, the problem is with a lot of the biohackers is really they get too much stuck in the matter. And for me, I always, what Wim says, mind over matter. For me, mind and spirit are over matter, and that's like spirit is what Joe Dispenza teaches. So matter is good. It's good to be able to understand matter, and it's not either or. It's just the kind of not being really too stuck in it. And when you can master also the mind, when you can understand how everything is connected. Because I mean, as a hypnotherapist, I know that so many diseases are psychosomatic. So many things can be just changed by, can be healed by changing the way you think. And in hypnosis, you see how like it's this subconscious and unconscious is like this just deep well with you can keep digging and digging and digging. And for me, again, that's where like the neuro feedback and then the training. And again, to me also, my meditation is the ultimate biohack, neurohack. And if you can do that, the matter will follow. If you can keep your brain, your heart in order and in tune with the nature, then the matter, meaning the body, will follow. But again, sometimes it's nice to be able to do those shortcuts as well.
Thank you very much, Karima. I think that can be a very good, a very closing remark. And by closing, I mean just transitioning into the moon ceremony. Thank you very much that you took the time, and it was very interesting.
Thank you all. Thank you very much for inviting me, and pleasure to meet you all. And yes, I'll send a few notes and hope the rest of, I'm pretty sure, I don't hope, I know the rest of the retreat will go also very well. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.